possible, and of course the workers are trying to get as much as they can. In the public sector, this is a co-conspiracy, not a negotiation. Everybody at the table would like to get more money. No one loses if salaries and benefits go up because it's the people's money, it's the taxpayers' money. It's taken by force, not by customer choice, as it would be, for example, in your case, Robert. If you make the cost of doing business at your restaurant too high, you will lose business, and you won't be able to meet those obligations, those gold-plated obligations you made to your workers. But if you're a government agency, if you're a department head in Austin, and you promise the sun, the moon, and the stars, well, I will have to find a way to pay for that, because it's not your money that you're promising them in that negotiation, it's mine. I don't think public sector workers should even be allowed to collectively bargain against the taxpayers of their state or their community. That to me seems immoral. And clearly, even if you disagree with me on the morality, we simply can't continue. We're broke. We don't have the money, and we're not going to have it going forward. It's not like in a few years we'll be able to go back to these sweetheart deals they have in Wisconsin and other states. This will have to go away.
You know, my point to those public service employee unions would be simply, if I was kind of Scott Walker, I think what I would say is, okay, I'll give you what you got. Now, you folks tell me which programs we cut so that we can have the money, because clearly people don't want to pay more taxes. We're taxed enough as it is. So you tell me which programs we can cut, and we'll go from there. Don't you find it
interesting, by the way, that nowhere in this discussion, this started with a teachers union, nowhere in this discussion have we heard anything about what's good for the children.
Well, no, but we have seen children out protesting.
And you know
when
why?
they ask them, why are you here?
Yeah,
I don't know, our teacher brought us.
But you know why? Because, I'm sorry to say, the job of a union is to stay in business and get what it can in each negotiating cycle. So we're not hearing what's best for the kids. We're not. Is it good for the children of Wisconsin to go weeks without schools being open? I doubt it. Is it going to be good for the children of Wisconsin, as Robert, you're saying, if they go up to 45 kids in a classroom? Probably not. I mean, it's clear that you cannot have collective bargaining against the very taxpayers who are the ones paying the bill, who are the actual bosses, if you will. Sure. We're really the managers, but we don't have any seat at that table when there's collective bargaining in the public sector, Cary.
It's actually though moving towards the way you want it, because I think the Bureau of Labor Statistics say that only 7% of public employees in the United States are unionized, and in the private sector it's 35%.
No, flip it. It's the opposite. 35% of public employees are.
That's right. You're right.
Only 7% of the private sector is.
Yeah. And it's like it was 55%. Like
and it goes back to that comment I made when we were off air. An old labor attorney said to me, any company that has a union, any private company that has a union in there, generally deserves it. And the place that I worked in Minneapolis that had a union, the old guy that owned the hotel was a mean SOB, and you know what, in retrospect, he did deserve the union, because he would fire at just at the drop of a hat, the whim du jour, whatever it was, and people had reason to be fearful for their job security. In the public sector, you know, I mean, how many, in places where they've had these problems, you know, these folks in California, all these city administrators are taking $500,000 apiece, and you know, they may or may not go to jail. You know, does the street sweeper out there really need a union if no one's being held accountable? I tend to doubt it.
10:52 on KTSA. Last night, the Justice Department put out a press release describing the arrest complaint against this Khalid Ali Al-Dawsari. He's the legal immigrant, Saudi jihadist in North Texas, who was arrested for trying to possess a suspiciously large quantity of chemicals. And it looks like he had gotten quite, you know, far down the road as far as his plotting and his planning, and he had grand schemes of, among other things, possibly attacking former President Bush. What's so interesting to me is, and again, this isn't meant to be an attack on one political party or administration, but we've had this war on terror now under two presidents of each party. We spent hundreds of billions of dollars on it. But really, this whole case came from citizen tips. None of this materialized from the so-called war on terror.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, what, was trying to mail order chemicals from a farm supply
if I
place.
understand it, it was a guy who said, you know, this seems like a lot of chemicals for a guy that's
Right,
not
and he wanted them shipped to a residential address.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just one citizen said, "This don't pass the sniff test."
So is that a good thing because we're vigilant and we're like Big Sister says, when we see something we say something, or is it really say we don't seem to be getting a lot of bang for our war on terror buck?
I would think that more often than not, when these things are going to be stopped, it may come from something like that.
Yeah.
Just
at least on the domestic front.
Yeah.
At least on the domestic front.
Domestically.
Yeah, I think the programs we have in place tend to try to find those people that are talking to foreign sources rather than somebody who says, "Hey, I think this is a great idea."
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard, but it doesn't sound like he had any ties to any foreign handlers.
I think he was working by himself.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand spectrum of the jihadi assignments,
Yeah.
How'd that guy happen to draw Lubbock? He must be really peeled because he's like, "Yeah, I'm the new guy. They send me to Lubbock. I got to do it on the phone.
You gotta
All
work
those
your
other
way
guys
up to
get
the-
U-Hauls. What's up?
You got to work your way up to the
Liver?
bigger terror markets, Robert.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Start out
You know,
small.
where do you go from Lubbock? Do you say, like, do you move on to Waco? Is that where you go?
Somebody asked me a good question the other day. I said, what is the genesis of this guy? Because I don't think this is a big top-down conspiracy where he received orders.
No.
So what radicalizes a guy like this? You know, he didn't come from poverty. He was in this country having a good life, enjoying the fruits of being a legal visitor to this country. What the hell goes on here?
He's 20, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, he's on a college campus.
Yeah.
You know, Lubbock is a pretty laid-back town. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot, you know, and it's a university town, so diversity per se doesn't bother them.
Should we be wondering about that, or is that really beyond our control?
Not just with someone like him, but someone like the guy that was on, anybody like that that snaps or has the potential to snap or is planning to snap. We should always be concerned about what made them like that, because in studying, it may be something we can learn about what made him like this that can maybe stop other folks. But then there's nothing. Then sometimes people are just do things like that regardless.
And I'm kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop deal where something in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks is going to come out that is the aha. Oh, that's why this guy got that way. And there's going to be the people saying, "Oh yeah, he always used to be doing this or that and the other thing," but no one ever said anything. Yeah. Much like the guy in Arizona, much like the kid at Virginia Tech, much like the guy that went and shot up that, what was it, the Social Security or Post Office up in New York. There's always after the fact, then people are all coming out and the dots get connected.
Well, this guy's roommates said that he stayed to himself all the time, and their friends would joke about him being a terrorist. Joke.
Right.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I kept to myself a lot and had bad hair too. So the same thing could have been said of me. When we come back, there's a lot more Gang of Four with these guys coming up, and your votes in the JR poll at 599-5555. Right now, 1056. Gang of Four is underway in the locker room at 11:12 on KTSA. We have Steve Hilbig, Cary, Clack, Robert Flemming. By the way, anytime you miss Gang of Four, you can catch the podcast of it in the afternoon on the KTSA website, Jack Riccardi page, and we'll also get the video podcast of this up in the coming days. But the audio podcast goes up right away this afternoon. This week, 4 Americans were found dead on a boat off the coast of Somalia. They had been attacked and hijacked by Somali pirates. We found out that the U.S. Navy was monitoring the situation. It was following the yacht. But didn't actually step in until it was too late, and these 4 were already dead. It's easy to say, people should watch where they go, and they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and so forth, but does America need a stronger, clearer policy about piracy? I mean, our very first military action as a young nation was the Barbary pirates, this very same part of the world over 200 years ago. Why are we so wishy-washy about this?
Don't have a clue.
Really, on one hand, I'm like, okay, there's pirates over there, so why go there? On the other hand, if the Navy was there and there's pirates there, then how did it get to that point anyways? But I don't think the Navy can be like the crossing guard for the entire Indian Ocean, okay? Don't get me wrong, I don't think that.
But the problem is that just as we saw when they seized the tanker, about 2 years ago, it doesn't affect just tourists, it affects commerce. And I think that we need to have our sea lanes safe, but you know, once again, it probably needs to be a collective effort rather than
I think there needs to be. You know, the thing that these merchant ships are unarmed. I can understand that, but I got to think if I was one of these oil tanker companies or something, my crew wouldn't be armed, but I would probably have private security on board. So if they start coming for us, just unleash the hounds. You know, they just don't have any business coming towards a tanker.
Well, you know, we don't need a full-scale war.
No.
But we certainly have, don't we, I think, the capability
to
to know where the bases of operations are, who the key people are. We seem to be able to put warheads on foreheads, as they say, in places like Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Yeah, where are the drones?
Would it really be too much to say, hey, you know, we've done this before, we can do it again, we have even more technology than we had when we did it before. Back then, you know, Jefferson had to send a group of Marines who rowed themselves ashore at Tripoli. Now you're talking about not even risking American lives to do it. Really? We just have to let this happen? 4 people with a boat full of Bibles get murdered right in front of the U.S. Navy? I mean, you talk about sending the wrong message to those people who are asking for our support and our endorsement. Here we are not giving it to them, and at the same time they see us so impotent that this happens. I don't think this is the way to go.
Yeah, you know, and I really had never thought about it until just now, but, you know, why aren't we, you know, we don't have to have the ships there, send in the drones. Yeah. I mean, you know, these guys operate in a large ocean, but in a fairly small corner of it. They're mostly off the coast of Somalia, and why can't we just, send in the drones?
And you don't need a lot of manpower or a lot of too many ships or anything.
No.
You're in the water. I mean, it's not like, you know, trying to keep stuff from coming into the United States from those terrorists. I don't know what the policy is.
And quite frankly, it probably sounds barbaric, but you know, if you blow a couple of them out of the water with a drone strike, it'll make the rest of them think twice.
Well, and I think that's just the issue, that I don't think that the United States wants to have pictures of bodies floating in the water, because it's kind of like, well,
bad PR.
This is, well, you know, without due process, he'd rather bring him to the United States and try him than take punitive action against him.
All right, 11:16 on KTSA. This week, a bakery, an industrial bakery in China Grove, fired about 200 of its approximately 500 workers after an ICE audit revealed that they were illegal. They did not have the proper documents to be working in the United States. Now, there's been an interesting change in recent years. Under the Bush administration, the general approach to illegal immigration in the workplace was these big raids where they'd send in 50 agents, they'd round up the illegal guys, they'd truck them out of there. Only we find out later that was as far as it went. It was a catch and release program. The Obama administration said, we don't think that makes sense. We're going to send one agent and we're going to have him look at the books. We're going to have him audit the books. He's going to identify the illegal worker, and the company will then be fined and punished and have to fire these workers. But as Lamar Smith has pointed out, you still have the problem of those workers just packing their things and going down the street to another employer who will hire them. So we really aren't solving this problem. Aren't we just really moving the deck chairs around?
Yeah, and as an employer, it just makes it harder and harder to quantify and qualify workers. You know, this whole subject needs some very rational discussion.
I'm curious. Now that you're saying that, how do you?
How do you know?
Yeah, how do you know?
Robert,
you don't, my friend. You don't, because let me tell you something. The documents that are presented, until I get it back from my payroll company, my PEO, that says that their documents will pass, I don't know. I've seen cards that are literally our government issued cards. You know, this is America. Anything can be bought. And there are people who work for the governmental agencies selling these cards.
A woman in Houston doing that.
You know, and so, you know, if we want to continue to fool ourselves to think that, you know, this is, you know, a business problem, it ain't. It's a governmental problem. And they don't want to do anything about it because all these undocumented, all these illegals, all whatever you want to call them, all have 941 taxes withheld that the politicians then get to spend without any accountability. And it's always been and will always be about the money, not the employer's money, the government getting the
money.
money.
So are you suggesting that the employers should stop or should not be required?
Oh, no. I'm not saying that at all, okay?